Hi, everybody. I'm Alison with Alison Kent Home Kitchen, and today we are going to go live with Emily. I'm typing her name as we speak. Lycopolus, who is the author of 8 cookbooks, recipe developer, and olive oil sommelier, which I didn't ask you about before, but that sounds so cool. Just be like an olive oil sommelier. I think I read that you have family in Italy?
Yes, my husband's family is in Italy. That's right.
See, I did some research.
Yeah.
Cheers, good to see you.
Good to see you too.
I can't even get over how much it must take because I was trying to quickly count how many recipes must be in.
There's over 180. I don't think I've actually counted myself.
In this book?
Yeah. And I don't think
sorry, so this was the second edition. How many were in the first edition? 180?
Yeah, over 180.
Holy, how much work must it take to do 180 unique, because you're a recipe developer, like 180 developed recipes. Do you have a whole team of people?
No, it's just me. Yeah. In my kitchen, I cook a lot. So 3 meals a day. 365 days in a year.
You must never cook the same thing twice.
Rarely.
Rarely.
Very rarely. Yeah. Usually if it's twice, it's something that's nostalgic that a friend made or, grandma's recipe, that kind of thing. But me in the kitchen, never twice.
Never twice. And do you find like you're just always kind of thinking of the next cookbook, or you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm always thinking about, how a recipe can fit into a book, or usually if I get on a train of thought, I wonder how this could wrap into another book or how it could integrate into something. That's for sure.
How many books into the future is your brain usually like working?
Well, that depends. Right now I'm kind of in limbo between projects, and so right now I just have a Rolodex of all the possibilities and where it could go, but usually I work at least 2 books in advance. So, and usually they're different, which means I can kind of work on different topics at the same time, which is nice.
And so this was the latest one to come out before the one that's just come out, right?
Exactly. Yeah, cedar and salt.
Yeah. I don't have a kitchen right now, but I'm excited to cook from
Yeah.
And I was lucky enough to have all you guys sign it.
Oh yeah, that's right. So fun.
I think I made you all do it. I was so I met Emily because I joined this photography workshop with Danielle Akin and Ariella Lube, the stylist and the photographer, and you cooking and doing the food behind the scenes. But I felt so out of place being in the camera kind of situation there, and all I kept wanting to do was go hang out with you in the kitchen. I was like,
a place to be, honestly.
I just kept thinking, I don't belong here with a camera. Like, I don't know. I don't belong here. This isn't why I'm here. Like, I know it's why I took the workshop, because I do want to learn how to take better photos. But I just felt so out of my element because I feel like I'm supposed to be in the kitchen. And I do that too when I'm at people's houses. Do you do that? You're like, yeah, I don't feel right sitting here. Like, I feel like I have to go behind the counter. And
absolutely. Yeah. Even if I'm just hands in dishwater, it's a place where I feel comfortable, and the best conversations happen around the kitchen counters as well. So
that's true. Although I won't let my husband like actually in the kitchen until it's time for dishes. He has to stay on the outside of the kitchen and just pour my wine. Because he'll sit there and he'll start cleaning. He loves to clean, and he'll suddenly throw out a sauce that I've just finished, that I spent 2 hours making a sauce, and he'll just assume it was for garbage, or he'll put away my knives just as I'm about to like actually go reach for a knife. And he's not a good kitchen companion.
Yeah, I've definitely started labeling all of my food in the fridge, especially if I have a photo shoot coming up or something that I'm cooking for, catering, anything. I have to put labels on it. Like, this is for this recipe. Do not use all of the eggs. I have to label everything or things will disappear, which is not a good thing.
Do you also do catering?
I do, yeah.
For people watching, you live in Victoria, but you spend a lot of time on Salt Spring.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
So the catering scene in Victoria is pretty alive and well?
It is. Yeah, it is. I like to do small events, and like at-home cooking classes, those kinds of things. It's really fun to do birthday parties, bachelorettes, all sorts of, fun things like that.
Oh, God. Well, I love that kitchen at the Bullock Lake Farm. Just that kitchen space, just like as an architect, like it's just like, oh, this
Well,
is
it's so
such
creative too, how they took like 2 sea containers and put them together and just how they outfitted it. It's so cool. And it's also a really efficient space. I love cooking in it. Yeah.
Do you go there? Do you cook there often for some of their events and stuff, or for?
I haven't cooked for their events, no, but anything that Danielle does and through Eat Creative, we always kind of cook out of their kitchen. So
Because you have the whole, there's a whole barn there and it's huge that you can do all your photography. So it's nice to have a kitchen right there.
exactly. And the light is beautiful in the barn and all around it as well. And so it's perfect for almost any kind of setup. And it's such a great space. So yeah, no, I love it.
Even I took a few decent photos when I wasn't like trying to sneak my way into the kitchen. I just kept wandering over going, I wonder what she's doing.
That's beautiful. Don't downplay. It was gorgeous.
Well, it was amazing. So this one is, you were telling me earlier, this was the latest one before the new one. And this is a very West Coast book.
Yes. Yeah. So it's Vancouver Island recipes, essentially from field, forest, farm, and sea. So we divided the chapters into the 4 elements, essentially. So the forest, the fields, and the sea. So the sea obviously is self-explanatory, but the forest is essentially anything foraged, and then field is cultivated, and farm is animal-based. So,
I love how
love those buffalo.
I love how the photos just give it all context too.
Exactly.
It's like you're not just looking at a
so
recipe with the food, but you're looking at the cow that it came from and the eggs that are like it's just very like the team of you guys, which is now a company, a thing called Eat Creative. So it's between you, Danielle,
and Aurelia.
Aurelia.
Yes.
So between the photographer, the cook, and the stylist, is that you guys just add so much context to the food, and it feels like you're really visiting the place that you're eating from. And the thing I love about that these days is you can't go anywhere.
Yes, armchair traveling, 100%.
So you really get to like travel as you're going through the book, and as you're going through the recipes, you're actually feeling the sense of place with it, right? And that's really rare to get in a cookbook.
That's one thing that Danielle does that is so amazing, and she's done that with our new book as well, is just created such a place, and it really enables you to feel like you're right there in the recipe. And so as much as I love how the recipes kind of emulate the place, it's even more so the opposite, and how she's able to pull the context and just take snapshots really of this place and create such a wonderful overarching picture of what really is happening on the ground. I marvel at her and how she does it.
Well, it's the creating of a story with your
Exactly.
place and the food that you're creating from that place.
Mm-hmm.
You had to, I know you're like a West Coast girl, but if you had to compare the food culture between West Coast and East Coast right now, I've been feeling like East Coast is where it's at right now, but
in so many ways it is. Like, they're so different. It's really hard to compare them, honestly. Like the West Coast food culture, I love, and it's so creative, and I feel like we don't really have any boundaries here. And so you can just play. There's lots of fusion cuisine. There's just so much coming out of the West Coast that's just insatiably creative. And I love that. Where the East Coast, I feel like, is creative in a different way. And they're breaking boundaries from a lot of the tradition that they came from, but also recreating that tradition in a really nuanced and beautiful new way. And so they're taking traditional ingredients, traditional recipes. They're doing so many things that are breaking boundaries in really great ways, and also incorporating entrepreneurship and business, and really changing kind of the agriculture, aquaculture traditions of how you make a living and survive on the East Coast into something that's just really, really cool. So you have salt makers now. You have just all sorts of different artisans that are using all of their skills and their traditions to make something entirely new. So you have herb vinegars from, fields, thinking of the Tangle Garden in the Annapolis Valley. You have wineries that are creating all sorts of cool different things. Like instead of just doing ice wine, they're doing ice cider. You have distillers that are making gins, and it's GINS, and every ingredient in the botanicals in the gin is from Nova Scotia. All these different creative, unique things that we just don't necessarily get here or have the attachment to try and create here on the West Coast.
Well, I think that, I don't know, when I think of the East Coast, and to be honest, I haven't been past Quebec City, so I don't really know like the coast. But my sense of it is that it's just so vast and kind of like ripe for the picking almost. Like there's just so much going on and so much land for it to go on in. Whereas here, I just feel like Vancouver's so congested and small, and then you hit a bunch of mountains and it's all over and there's nothing left. And so we get like a little bit of foodie culture out of the Okanagan that's a bit new for us, and we can mix and match those flavors, but it doesn't feel as vast as what in my mind is maybe the East Coast and what they have to offer between their like land, sea, forest, and farm, which is
exactly. Well,
did you take the same approach with the new book, the one that I have pre-ordered? Did you break it up in a similar way, or?
We didn't. We decided to keep it by province because they're so distinct, and each province is incredibly unique. So it's Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, Prince Edward Island, and New Brunswick are the 4 provinces, and then each of them have their own chapter. Yeah, and they're so incredibly unique, yet they're all unified together in this Atlantic picture. And so it's very fascinating how they've evolved each on their own. But you're right, there's so much land and there's so much space, and there's a lot more opportunity for young farmers to decide, you know, my family is from Vancouver and somebody else's family is from, like, my partner's family is from France, and I want to be right in the middle, and the middle happens to be Prince Edward Island, so I'm buying a 5-acre farm and starting an apiary. You just can't do that here. That doesn't exist. But, you know, Canoe Cove Honey did that. And, you know, it's amazing to see how they can be innovative and creative because there's just a lot more resources, natural resources to be able to not take advantage of, but just enjoy and also create sustainable agriculture and aquaculture and sustainable businesses from it. It's very cool how they're being so innovative.
I'm so excited to visit, and I feel like I will be using your new cookbook as like a travel guidebook as well. Maybe like half cookbook, half, okay, where should I go eat next, and where should I go see next, and which like little, you know, lobster traps should I go check out and stuff like that. Like I'm so excited to go one day. The olive oil one I have as well. And I was mentioning to you that I was excited about this because I don't know anything about olive oil, A. I rely on all the shops to tell me, and really they're just telling me what they have in stock, not necessarily how to taste olive oil and how to get diverse about it. But I've also started making a lot of my own vinegars.
Oh, fun.
And so as I have this shelf, every time I walk by, it just smells like vinegar on the whole shelf because it's right beside all the kombuchas too. So there's a lot of fermenting happening, and my house is not big. You haven't been in my house yet, but it's not very big for all of these experiments. I'm thinking of turning the garage into a test kitchen where I can keep all my little experiments.
Oh, that's perfect.
But I was so excited about this, but what I didn't realize was that this has so many recipes to go through. How do you even wrap your head around that many recipes? I can't even comprehend it. Like that's 180 recipes. How do you even like sort that out in your brain?
Well, I guess for that book, I really broke it down by oil and vinegar. And so that was my intention, was to really teach people how to create and integrate olive oil and vinegar into everyday life. So the book is divided by oils and vinegars, exactly, white balsamics, dark balsamics, and then you also have in there a lot of infused olive oils, infused balsamic vinegars, all sorts of different flavor profiles of extra virgin olive oils as well. And so my idea with the book was to really kind of break it down by, here are the very best recipes to use with these specific oils and vinegars. And because there's such a wide variety, that's kind of where I started. And then from there, tried to create some freeform recipes that weren't really recipes at all, to just give people a foundation and ideas where they can start to create on their own, because there's so much you can do. Like, I feel like I could really write that book 4 times over and still be creating new recipes. And the funny part is I go back to it and actually remake recipes from it because they're out of my head, but then I'm always creating new things and riffing off of them and making new things again. So I feel like oil and vinegar are just a really solid foundation that give you just so much flexibility with your cooking, that you can take the same recipe, change out the oil and vinegar, and then again, you're going to get a different flavor profile. You're going to get a different end result just based on what you're using. So it also works for cooks who aren't necessarily that flexible, want to really follow a recipe. Here's a foundation, and then you can change your oil and vinegar and come up with something new.
Well, I just got this one. I haven't had a huge chance to go through it yet, but I'm imagining that depending on, say, your seasonal vegetables or whatever, you might pick an oil and a vinegar that kind of pair with whatever vegetables, and then that's how you can kind of keep riffing about. And
exactly, because there's more varieties of olives than there is of grapes. So if you think about the variety, and
I did read that in your first page. That sounded incredible to me.
So if you think about an olive oil, you can't just reduce it to olive oil. You're going to pull a piquois, and that's going to have notes of green tomato, and it's going to be really herbaceous and peppery and full of flavor. You want to use that on pasta. You want to use that with bolder flavors, radicchio, arugula. Where then on the other side, if you're wanting to bake, you're wanting arbequina, something that's really buttery and mild and creamy. And every variety has its own unique flavor profile. So just like you're not going to put Merlot with salmon or with cod, you're not.
I put wine with food. I don't know. It's kind of basic.
Exactly. And the thing is, you can.
But I'm learning. I'm trying to learn more about wine too.
Yeah.
The olive oils and vinegars are just so universal, it sounds like. And how many do you have in your house? Must have shelves.
Yeah. I don't think I can actually count the number of bottles that I have around.
The one thing I did manage to get through the first chapter since I got it just this week, but the one thing I learned that I'm doing wrong is buying olive oil in plastic containers.
Like dissolves like.
So I'm not going to do that anymore because I've learned that.
Yeah, there's so many little tricks. And, you know, my hope with that book was just to really provide a foundational education for people who care about quality ingredients and care about their olive oil. And if they're willing to spend, you know, $15, $20, even $30 a bottle on olive oil, then, you know, you don't want to buy something that's the same as the $6 bottle.
No. Well, I also, when I used to travel,
right. And that could happen in the before times.
In the before times. I would never bring back like an extra suitcase full of clothes or anything like that. I would bring back an entire extra suitcase just of food that I had found on my travels, of spices and like truffle salts in Paris. And I've brought back like and they were always in metal containers of olive oils from Greece and Italy and places like that. And I don't know what I'm buying, to be honest, but it's in the market there and it looks like it's something that's authentic. And I'm like, okay, we're getting some of this. We're taking it back to Vancouver. So far, they check my luggage every time, but so far they've let me bring everything through. So it's good.
That's awesome. Cheese is one of the ones you have to worry about, but other than that, you're usually pretty good.
Did you travel much? Do you get a lot of inspiration from like traveling to different places or in the pre-times?
Yes, in the pre-times, definitely. Yeah, my husband's family, they own an olive grove in Italy, and we used to live in Germany, so have traveled Europe extensively, and that's really where I fell in love with food and fell in love with olive oil. When we were living in Germany and we would drive, it was only 7 hours to go down to his family's farm, so we would go for weekends and just share time together. I fell in love with the olive oil and totally took it for granted. Loved learning about the process and the nuances and thought it was so cool, but didn't really understand what I was consuming and how special it really was until we moved back to North America. And I pulled the $6 bottle of Bertolli off the shelf. It's like, what is this? This is not what I am used to. Like okay, I've been spoiled going to the Italian market like everything else that, you know, food eating in Europe. And once I started realizing that I was buying the $6 bottle and the $20 bottle and even up to the $50 or $60 bottle, and they were all tasting the same, it's like, okay, my chemistry background is starting to get curious. Like, this is not quite right. What are we into if the price and quality are not in sync at all? So that sending out.
No, yeah, you'll pay a lot for something that's just not good here because we just don't grow it and we don't know. We don't have that experience with it, right? Like,
exactly. And the biggest thing with olive oil here in North America is that no one buys it, and it's a fresh fruit juice. There is no difference between squishing an olive and squishing an orange. And so if something's going to sit on the shelf for 4 or 5 years because nobody's buying it, it's going to go bad. So even if it was a really delicious, wonderful olive oil when it was first harvested, and you know, the producers spent time creating this beautiful product under fluorescent lights on our grocery store shelves, it's not lasting.
Year after year. How do you become an olive oil sommelier? Is there a specific training program? I guess in Europe they take it quite seriously, but how would you do that here?
Yeah, so I took courses at the International Culinary Center in California and in New York, and then also classes in Italy as well through it's ONOW is the acronym. It's an Italian school that teaches classes as well. So yeah, it's a process, but lots and lots of drinking olive oil. Lots of drinking oil.
And how do they taste olive oil? Straight up or with bread?
Oh no, always straight up. I actually don't have a tasting glass with me, but they're little cobalt blue tasting glasses that look almost like a wine glass with like a stemless wine glass is what you taste out of. You always drink it straight. You cleanse your palate with sparkling water and usually garnish with apple, sometimes some yogurt if you need to, but yeah. And you aerate it. So very much like drinking wine, you breathe in through your nose and aerate your palate as you're drinking.
That's so cool. I just started taking wine classes because I don't know anything about wine either, but it's part of all just the learning so much about food. And I feel like whether it's food, wine, olive oil, vinegar, whatever, it's just a lifetime, and you could go on forever and still be just tipping the iceberg of everything you could potentially learn about food. And somebody had an olive oil tasting with you.
Oh, fun.
In my kitchen, Vancouver. Yeah, I was gonna say too, I feel like you should host these because even in Vancouver, like I wouldn't know where to go. Although I think here Gourmet Warehouse used to have tastings in their shop, and you could go, but I didn't know enough to attend them. And again, you take things for granted, and then they're gone, and you're like, darn it. Wish I'd done those.
I teach olive oil tasting classes through In My Kitchen in Vancouver. So yeah, it's super fun.
Perfect. I have to start getting out a bit more when we can get out a bit more.
When that is a thing.
Whenever that is a thing. So your new cookbook, which is the East Coast version of this, is coming out when?
April 27th is the date right now.
April 27th, but it's available by pre-order.
Correct. Yes.
On Indigo Chapters.
Yeah, Chapters, and through independent booksellers as well, because we love to support our local businesses.
There's some cool ones in Victoria. I remember them.
Monroe's and Boland's. There's so many good ones here, but there's lots of great independent booksellers across Canada, and you can pre-order at them as well, and of course Amazon too.
What's your next book after that?
I'm actually working on another olive oil book.
Oh, are you?
Yeah.
One that's like, this is already pretty food centric. So what would be new? And
so the next one that I'm working on right now, and it's just in the proposal phase.
We won't tell anybody.
It's more of like a textbook on varietals and how to incorporate different varietals into different dishes. And so the goal is to really help people understand the different tasting notes, flavor profiles, and then how each of those varietals can work in different dishes in unique ways. So think about cooking a shrimp. You can cook it in 3 different kinds of olive oil. It's going to taste different depending on what you cook it in. A lot of people think that the shrimp is different, but it's actually the olive oil that is not the common denominator. The shrimp is the common denominator. And so the plan is to be able to work with producers, share their stories as well, how their growing practices, techniques, all of those kinds of things integrate into how the oil tastes different. And then also talk with agronomists and share their stories of how they've become agronomists in olive oil specifically, and then get them to share insights into just the simple details like irrigation, rain, weather, all of those influence the terroir and the way that the olive oil will taste. And so the goal is to really focus it on just extra virgin olive oil and create a food story of the olive, especially here in North America, and how California, Texas, Georgia, Arizona, they're all producing really great olive oils right now. And so pull the old world into the new world and just talk about the varietals and how foundational they are into how we cook every day.
So focused kind of still globally with olive oil.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of people don't realize like Australia is producing some of the best oil in the world right now.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
That should be so much fun. I'm excited for that one. I feel like also consumers and home cooks and people in general are just getting so much more knowledgeable that I'm finding a lot of the cookbooks I buy now have a lot of science in them. Like they're down to drawing out the little molecular things of different whatevers of like how strawberry tastes and whatever. They've broken it down into every single little chemical vibe that they can get out of it. And I think that it's good, like you're doing, is just diving into it a level deeper, because a lot of people are actually ready for that and they're excited to learn maybe the, you know, the chemistry behind olive oil, or the, like you said, the terroir behind it, and how it, you know, affects the taste, and how each olive oil affects the taste of the food again. So you're like layering it from the dirt up as you would anything. I mean, that's the same with your pork and your beef and your eggs and your milk and whatever. If you're thinking about it from the dirt up, it's just a totally different kind of way to look at your food, instead of just what I get at the grocery store. I don't know. Okay.
But the other thing with the grocery store is that, like, I call it bottle fatigue, but you're standing in front of this wall of bottles and you don't know how to read a label. You're not familiar with any of the varieties. You're not familiar with what should or shouldn't be on a bottle. And so it's just, you're in a daze. And I remember spending hours staring at just walls of bottles of olive oil and not knowing which one to pick, and seeing the different price points, and just being exhausted and hoping that the one that I pull off the shelf is a good quality. And so I hope that this new book will also speak to that. And I'm posting lots more on my website as well about, you know, how to support with bottle fatigue and which one to pull off the shelf and where, and even silly things like don't buy the one on the top shelf because it's under the most direct heat and light. And so it'll go back faster. So you always want to buy one on the bottom shelf or in the middle.
Okay, between that and don't buy the ones in the plastic bottles, I've got some good takeaways here.
And you've eliminated like 50% of that already.
See, there we go. My bottle fatigue will be so much lower now.
Yay. Yeah.
Yay. I love it. Okay, what's your website that everybody can go follow you on?
Oh, Olive Oil Critic.
oliveoilcritic.com? .com. And is that for all your cookbooks and everything too, or do you have a different website for that?
Nope, all the cookbooks. Yeah, it's
oliveoilcritic.com. And
Eat Creative as well, eatcreative.ca.
eatcreative.ca, and your new book is coming out. It can be pre-ordered on Chapters Indigo and small bookstores that we like to support. And thank you so much for hanging out with me today.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure. Thanks.
I learned a lot already. Not the least of which, because we chatted beforehand, was realizing we grew up near the same neighborhood. Well, thank you so much, Emily. I wish you all the best luck in your new cookbook with you and Danielle, and a Rising Tide. Rising Tide, which I have pre-ordered and I'm excited for.
Thank you. Amazing. Well, enjoy your evening. Thank you.
You as well. Thank you. Chat soon.
Bye.
Bye.